we care deeply about this project, but your commitment to this issue and the national issues and the support of EPA, despite, you know, the frustration, we really appreciate your support. And we really want to do what's necessary to make sure that everything is safe here. We do work under a regulatory scheme, but we have children. We care about your children. We care about you. And, you know, I personally grew up in a town with my next door neighbor got leukemia from the site in Woburn that, and he died at 13 years old because of the drinking water that we were drinking, that I was drinking when I was a kid. So I get it. We really want to be proactive, but we do have, you know, we have our toxicologists that are telling us what, you know, what they think is safe, what's not safe. We're dealing in the parts per trillion level. You know, all our other regulations were always parts per billion, 1,000 times higher. So when you're talking about 70 to 10, you're talking about 0.06 parts per billion, you know, a drop in a swimming pool. So it's hard to even wrap our brains around this particular issue because we're talking about parts per trillion, and we're talking about toxicity in parts per trillion. So this is something that we really care about. As I said earlier, I have 113 Superfund sites and a few hundred other sites that are under my responsibility. This is one of those that I pay attention to every day.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
Can you just reconcile for us the difference between New Jersey's science and what they're coming to in the MCL versus what EPA's number is? You're talking about, you're saying that parts per trillion are, you know, we didn't know before how to deal with them, but we have things like anthrax and other things that are very low levels that are very concerned public health issues. So
Yeah.
can you tell us can you just talk to us a little bit about what that difference is and why the EPA is still staying on the 70 when other states like New Jersey has come down to 14?
Well, no one did anything until EPA acted, right? There hasn't. These states that are coming up with these levels now are acting as a result of EPA's science. So, for example, EPA's number assumes a lactating mother, okay, is drinking 2.8 liters of water a day over the course of some extended period of time. I don't know what the exact time frame is, but it's averaged over a year. It's every day for a year, averaged over a lifetime. I mean, that's the way it's calculated. You multiply it by an average body weight of that lactating mother, and they, within our standard, they assume that 80% of perfluorinated compounds are coming from other sources. So they cut the standard down. If they didn't assume that, the standard would be it would be higher, right? Because they're assuming 80%. Let's say that you can have a jar full of PFAS. They're already assuming the jar is 80% full, and the rest of the risk you only have left is this. So the number comes out to 70. It would be something like 400 if you didn't assume it's called relative source contribution. If you didn't assume that people are already getting that dose from other things besides just drinking water. So that's how much of a dose we're assuming people are getting outside of this issue. Like when you're eating your food that you're cooking on Teflon pans, that sort of thing. So that's the calculation there, and I think New Jersey used the same toxicity information we use, but they may have used a child's body weight, multiplying it by some different water intake. I mean, that's how complicated this is, and it's all, you know, that number that's the basis of this, the toxicity number, has 1,000 times safety factor built into that already.
For adults.
For everyone. No, it goes from animal studies to human studies, and there's 1,000 times safety factor within those studies that come up with the reference dose. And the reference dose is the same one I think New Jersey used that we're using.
It's the same reference dose.
And again, it's just whether they use the same body weight, whether they probably didn't assume a lactating mother, they may have assumed a child.
Exactly.
But that child does not necessarily correlate directly to the study of a lactating mother, so whether that's right or not, it's It's conservative,
Well, Minnesota
and that's
also-
fine. You know, EPA uses our best science. The states are free to go lower than us. And almost every contaminant you'll see, the states have different levels. I mean, it's amazing across, even perfluorinated compounds. If you look at every state, there's a good ITRC document, interstate, whatever the ITRC, if you look it up, there's a great document that shows every state and every perfluorinated compound standard. It just came out this week. And some states have 1,000 as their number. You know, yeah, but they still have it. They still have it as 1,000. We went to 70, and then states went below us, you know, and that's fine. But our scientists are standing by the 70 that we put in place a year and a half ago. So that's the difference. There's the body weight, there's the ingestion amount, there's the relative source contribution, which they may assume is 95%. I don't know what they did. And the body weight of a child would make the number lower because that's in the numerator. It's really just a math equation that's used.
The point is, it's more protective of children because they based it on the children. And that's my whole point. And Minnesota has come out with proposed numbers that are much lower than 70 as well. I believe it's 27 for people. So, and that is based on delivery to babies from lactating mothers and water for formula. So that's
Right.
what that number is based on. So my point is that those numbers are much lower, much more protective because they are targeting children. And so that's what we're worried about when we talk about people serving their water to their children. We're worried about whether or not that's actually safe for our children. And why is
Right.
EPA so high compared to the states that are now even more conservative and have lots of contamination issues in their states? And that is more protective of children. So, you know, we're worried about our children drinking the water.
You're saying EPA is so high, our scientists disagree that it's so high. But the difference between if you're I'm not a chemist, I'm not a toxicologist either. I'm an engineer, but I have to understand this stuff, right, to be able to explain it. But the difference in I mean, we're still trying to deal with the analytical methods that get down to these low levels. And you know, if you look at one sample, the same sample being analyzed by two different labs, you're going to have lots of noise in that data. And when we're talking about parts per trillion noise, it's not that spread is not out of the realm of possibility. So it's just a difficult question, and it's the same thing with every contaminant. You know, we make a determination. Some of the states go lower. Some of the states are higher than us. Again, I get what you're saying, though. It's your kids that are drinking this water, and I understand that. We're working under the best science we have. You know, the best thing we could all do is be at zero, or 10 years ago we would have thought this was zero, right? Because we couldn't have detected it at these levels back then.
No, we're talking about now.
Yeah, no, I know. But that zero now is not going to be zero 10 years from now. So it's a difficult question, and I 100% understand the concern.
So when you talk about protectiveness, short-term and long-term, and we see numbers that are above other states, and you say short-term it's okay, we don't think it is. That's a problem. And the long-term, we still don't think that is either. But when you're looking at other states that are much more protective in terms of the numbers, the standards that they say is acceptable, and you're talking about short-term protectiveness, I disagree that that's the case.
I guess I will say one thing about that. I've been dealing with this across the country, dealing with lots of other EPA regions on this. There's no state that's been more aggressive than New Hampshire on this issue. Whether they set the level at 70 or 14 or 20, there's no state that's been more aggressive than New Hampshire.
How are you defining
Across the state. They have found more issues in New Hampshire because of their aggressive sampling. And that, you know, that is a good thing. It makes it difficult, though, because now we're dealing with the reality. All these other states haven't dealt with the reality yet, I can tell you that.
New Jersey has done a lot of sampling. They have, both of them.
I'm telling you, New Hampshire is the most aggressive state on this issue. And as a result, we have a lot of information, and that information is showing low levels of perfluorinated compounds all over the place. And that's difficult. That's something that we all have to deal with. They have to figure out how to deal with. You know, just recently the car wash at levels that are 5 times higher than the highest level we found at Coakley in the middle of the landfill. You know, so that's an issue. That's something that we all have to think about. Where are we headed next? How much are we, you know, we got to deal with Coakley, but we got to deal with these other places too, you know. So again, I want to thank you all for your commitment to this, because, and you know, people like Tom who give us ideas, give us information. We're willing to listen to all the information. You know, your commitment to this, it's important. Everyone's. It helps us. It really does. It helps us to get more done, having you involved and concerned and pushing the process. Yep.
Thank you, Brian. I just want, on behalf of DES, I just want to make clear, right now, today, we communicate with our risk assessment staff regularly on this and have been for many, many months now. And today what they're telling us is they believe the 70 parts per trillion is a protective standard. Having said that, we are not at all indifferent to the states that have come out with lower numbers. We've looked at those in the past when they've been raised, when they've come to our attention. There's been more recent information in the last few weeks about, you know, New Jersey and other states developing lower numbers. And we're looking at that, and we will be continuing to evaluate the work that those scientists have done. This is really, it comes down to, you know, very capable scientists, very reasonable, qualified scientists and risk assessors and toxicologists can review this data and come to different conclusions, none of which are necessarily the wrong conclusions or you know, or irresponsible. It's just that there are so many assumptions that going into calculating a risk assessment number, and very reasonable folks who are qualified to do so can come to different conclusions about that. So having said that, we are looking at these numbers. We're looking at the work that those other states have done, and we will be communicating with our risk assessment staff, with others, and EPA's scientists and toxicologists have been very helpful. We'll be talking with EPA about that. We want to make sure, you know, we don't have a preconceived idea of where our standard should be. We want our standard to be at a responsible, reasonable, protective number. And we will continue looking at that for as long as there's new information and data becoming available. And to the extent that we determine that our standard isn't protective and needs to be lower, we will lower it. We will work to lower it. So I just wanted to make sure that you understood that from DES's perspective, it's not a static situation. It's something that we continue to work on really every day.